We have a guest joining us from all the way from Australia. Child and adolescent development expert Sarah Boyd is here to share practical ways to build emotionally healthy families. And more importantly, ways we can all turn down the noise in this chronically overstimulated world.
Overstimulation is the invisible epidemic of our time, affecting not just adults, but our children too. Rising levels of anxiety, burnout, and attention struggles, they're not just personality quirks, they're symptoms of a world that's too loud, too fast, and too much. Sarah Boyd, child and adolescent development expert, says it doesn't have to be this way. In her new book, Turn Down the Noise, she shares practical tools to help families cut through the chaos and build real emotional health for parents and children.
Boyd, welcome to 700 Club Interactive. We are so happy to have you all the way from Australia, girl.
Excited to be here.
Absolutely. We are excited to have you. All right. Well, let's get right into it. Overstimulation is really an invisible epidemic in our world today. You know, we all have experienced it, but may not recognize all the ways it shows up in our lives. What are signs of overstimulation and chronic stress? And then what, are there differences between what that looks like in children versus adults?
Yes, so overstimulation is something that happens in our brain when we become overwhelmed by too much sensory input or stress. And essentially what happens is we have all these cognitive and emotional reactions. We have irritability, emotional upsets, we become aggressive, we feel fatigued, we might feel brain fog. It's really where we have that feeling of like we can't put two and two together, we can't concentrate properly, and it tends to lead to big emotional outbursts. It does look different for children. A lot of times we see this in their behavior. We think you can look at a child who's overstimulated and it can sometimes look like a tantrum, or it can look like they're just quote unquote bad behavior, but sometimes it's actually the overstimulation that's driving that behavior. And so that you can tell the difference with children if it's a tantrum, if you were to give in to what they wanted, their behavior would stop. Whereas when it's overstimulation, those kind of meltdowns and emotions continue regardless.
Well, how does our environment impact us as adults and children in regards to overstimulation, and how important is it to address this?
Yeah, so our environment is essentially what forms us. So the inputs that we have nature and nurture, and obviously we're all born. Children are all born, we all know, all parents will know they're born with a temperament. But then God's given us this incredible world of hopefully inputs of healthy relationships and movement and pace of life and great challenges along the way. Unfortunately, one of the things that's happening in the modern world today is it's becoming so fast-paced and so pressured and so intertwined with media that pace and pressure is beginning to have a negative effect for we're seeing in many children and teens especially, and as well as for parents who are sharing that they feel burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you talk about high sensitivity and overstimulation in the book. What is the difference between the two, and how do they both impact us?
Yeah, so high sensitivity is a trait or a temperament. It's not a medical diagnosis that about 20% of the population have. These people are deep thinkers. They're very in touch with their emotions. They're very deep processors of information. People who have the trait of high sensitivity are much more vulnerable to experiencing overstimulation, meaning that they experience more often and more intensely than people without the trait. So just understanding yourself and knowing whether or not you or your child has that trait can really empower you to navigate family life.
Yeah, how can people figure out if they are highly sensitive individuals?
Yeah, so there's questionnaires. We have one on our website at resilientlittlehearts.com, and you can find all the things there. You really want to be thinking, is my child a deep thinker? Are they asking about God at really early ages, asking about the meaning of life and what happened? Are they very emotional? They seem very sensitive when things happen in life. Are they deeply affected by what they see? Obviously, we're all affected by media, but they in particular are quite sensitive to certain stories or media or movies. And then are they often thinking deeply about the issues in life? Those are some of the kind of main areas you can tell whether you or your child might have the trait of high sensitivity.
Yeah, that's definitely good to know. Well, like many people, we've all experienced some life-altering moments, and you experienced a life-altering moment yourself. Early in your marriage, you were diagnosed with cancer. How did you see your own resiliency or emotional health be impacted by that journey?
Yeah, it was definitely one of the first big challenging things that I had gone through in life. I was a young adult when I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of thyroid cancer, and I went through 18 months of treatment. In terms of my emotions, I had a lot of them. I was angry and frustrated. I was feeling a lot of grief. I had all the questions with faith of God, why is this happening to me? And I think sometimes that's what we misunderstand about what true resilience is. It's not about always feeling happy and strong all the time. It's actually about having appropriate emotions for the context and knowing what to do with them. And so when you can take all those emotions and actually take them to God rather than running away from them, with the emotions, it actually develops a capacity within you. And in the psychological literature, they talk about this new concept, which is actually an ancient concept. They call it post-traumatic growth disorder, where they see individuals who go through suffering, and when they come out the other side of that season of challenge, they report deeper connections with loved ones, deeper spiritual connection, and just a sense of meaning in life. And that's what we see in Romans 5 when we say, when God's teaching us that suffering produces perseverance, character, hope. And that's what really happened to me. In the moment, I was messy and broken and human, and it was very challenging experience. But as I walked through it, I now look back on that experience as a gift in my life because of what it produced within me.
That's really powerful. Well, I also wanted to talk about the organization that you started, Resilient Little Hearts. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so my background is in educational psychology, and it was very soon after the cancer diagnosis that I was able to become a mum. And it was all of those life-altering events together that made me realize just how important it is to obviously teach our children how to navigate hard things and to really love these children and help bring them up in what God has for them. And so essentially, Resilient Little Hearts, we create resources for parents, teachers, and professionals to build resilience and emotional health in children. And we cover everything from emotionally healthy parenting to anxiety to children with neurodivergence to building connection with them, and how we can foster that so that we can make this next generation strong.
I absolutely love that. Well, last question, Sarah, for those struggling with overstimulation, what word of encouragement or even advice would you give them to really combat that in their lives?
So, firstly, to say it's not your fault. Overstimulation is just one of those cognitive limitations that we have living in this modern world. And that's essentially what it is. It's a limitation. So, the first thing I would say is that we have to wrestle with, we're a human being. We're not a machine or a computer. We actually have to have limits. We can't be limitless. But when we hit our limit, that's where our dependency upon God begins. And so I would just encourage people just to take that first step of placing just a small boundary on yourself so that, and your life and your family life, so that you can thrive. So that could look like putting your phone to bed in the kitchen when you go to sleep rather than having it in your bedroom, or waking up and spending that time in the morning in prayer before you hit your day rather than just jumping to the next thing. Those small boundaries, they build up a fabric of health in our life, and they're really important.
I love that. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your book, Turn Down the Noise, a practical guide to building an emotionally healthy family in a chronically overstimulated world. Thank you so much for all that you're doing for children and families and adults, because we all need to turn down the noise. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
And guys, I just want to let everyone know, make sure to get the book wherever books are sold, and to see what Sarah is doing next, check out her website, sarahboyd.co.